Hello guys and welcome to another video, and this one's going to be during the renovations of our current factory. And today we're going to be tackling power cable management. So if you do enjoy this video, find it helpful, make sure to drop a like, and obviously if you want to see more and haven't already, do subscribe. But let's get into it. And I should mention that there is nothing wrong with having sprawling lines of cables. After all, the game is meant to be played how you want to play it. And I know a lot of people hate having to deal with cables, but I personally love the challenge. It's in itself a whole new way of doing logistics and working out solutions to problems. Instead of working out how you can neatly move items from one line to a manufacturer or assembling line, we're working out what we can do with cables to make them look cleaner. So my first tip of this video is going to be about using power poles, and you don't have to use every single joint that's available. Take a look here. This is something that you can do at any point in the game. We're taking one constructor to one of the joints on each of the power poles and then daisy chaining the rest. If we were to double up these, for example like this, you can see that the lines are crossing over and it's starting to look messy. It's still pretty clean because of our placement of the power poles, which we will talk about in a moment, but it's one thing to bear in mind. You don't need to use every single joint available. That being said, there are also times when you can go against this. This section, with all of the joints being used, looks pretty neat. And another thing that you can do, whether you want to or not, is to place these poles onto walkways or even on top of splitters and mergers. I should also mention that in order to do it on splitters and mergers, you need to first take an empty joint, like here, and then place down your power poles, and from here you can connect them up how you wish. Returning to this example, I wanted to talk about the placement. So you should always try to create an organized system. So for example, with constructors, because they're one foundation wide, I always place a foundation, every foundation on the little joint, as you can see down here, or every other if we're doubling up. Having that space between that's always the same is just a really easy way to make everything look cleaner. And you'll notice that throughout this video, I use this same technique. I always try and place the joints in the exact same spot, as you can kind of make out here, but we'll be talking about this system in a moment too. Now, though I don't always use this one, I do try and reduce the amount of space between the cable and the constructor or packager, for example. So the shorter the line, the better it looks, in my opinion. As you can see here, in comparison to the last bit, it looks a bit more tighter and cleaner, even though these are clipping through. So do bear that in mind. Sometimes it's better just to go as short as possible, and this works even better with joints, which we'll talk about in a moment. My next tip is where you should actually place your power lines. Now, generally speaking, if you've got a passageway, you shouldn't have your cables in that section. It's better to hide them away where possible. As you can see here, we've got an open space. Rather than run the lines through this section, I much rather have it where I'm not going to be walking. Like demonstrated here, it's a really compact section. It actually looks pretty clean because it's so compact, but we also have the power in this section, which is where I'm not going to be walking. Even better yet, you can actually place the power below. Here we've got a slightly raised manifold. So as you can see here, we've tucked this joint just below. We're going to just go here, and you can see how the line is actually being run along the bottom out of the way, and then the joint just takes the power up nice to the side from below. This looks really clean, especially when you're looking at it from this side. Pretty cool. And the other alternative is that you can take the power from high above, so it's out of the way and just being brought down to your buildings. And this is really great for keeping everything out of the way of where you're walking or where you may have any vehicles. Also, while I'm here, I should also mention that don't always use power poles. Go to the awesome shop, unlock those power joints, they can do a huge amount to really adding to the clean, I don't want to say clean too much, but it is super clean, the cable management of your factories. And remember that these joints or the power poles can all be upgraded as well. You can see here we're using the Mark II, and we're actually using the beams which have come in update 5. You can also use the pillars as well, but this is a fantastic way to just take the power above the build, and it looks really clean, especially when merged with lighting. I love this. It's beautiful. Separately, use lighting, it looks great in your builds. And this here is an example as to how I use the joints on pillars to keep things clean. Again, we are keeping those intervals between the joints, but we're also using the pillars to hide the horizontal cabling as well, which makes it look super organized. I'm just genuinely very happy with how this build in particular turned out. Now I am showing the horizontal line here, but if you don't mind clipping, you can actually clip the power joints through the pillars or the beams and use them to transport the power without being revealed. So here we have both a pillar and a beam. What we're going to do is we're going to grab some power from here. We'll delete both of these. And then we're going to replace this and also place one of these over the top. Let's do 2. And from here, we're going to just grab this power line and run it through to here. And do the same again. You won't be able to grab this, but don't worry, you just need to delete this. Place that there. And from here, say you want to use this side, we're just going to grab these joints through and then cover these up again. There you are, nice and clean. Now the beam is slightly different, so this gets buried completely within it. So what we're going to do is, if we just move this one across, we're going to delete this for a second. And we will run this, I don't know, there. Place the connector, delete that, run this through. Depending on how short the line is or how long it is, you can get some sagging, so do be aware of that. And you'll have to place these carefully along the joints as you wish. So for example, let's do here. Would help if I deleted the right piece. Then replace. In fact, while we're here, let's do that there. So those are just creative ways in which you can hide those conveyor poles. Another thing that you can do, if transporting power from one factory over to another, is to use rails. This is great because it means that you can easily transport power from one of your factories, your main factory, and then by connecting it to a train station, you can connect another factory. That being said, if you do want to run power cables along to different parts of your factory, like we've done here, you can run the cables alongside your conveyor buses, just to keep everything in one place and nice and clean. At first glance, you can't see any power cables here. However, if we look a little bit closer below, you can see that little rise and dip of the cable that's running along this conveyor. As you can see, it's out of sight, but it is there. For others, something that I don't do is creating power lines and really making it a feature of your build. Here I just drew up something really quickly. Perhaps that's something you want to do. Not for me, but it's a nice way to display those cables and make them look like they're actually part of your factory. Now I'm sure some of you are wondering why you would run the cables underneath or along tracks instead of just using the power over tracks. Well, this comes into something that I'm trialing in my build currently. Since update 4 we were given switches. Now currently you can only use them to switch on or off. I have a feeling that potentially further down the line at a later date we may have more complicated functions that come to these switches, maybe even some logic. So for that I've separated, at least in this section, my different factories. To give you an idea, if we take this factory here, which is our concrete factory, if I turn this off, we now have our factory turned off. You can also see that I've used the lights to help signify when a factory is on or off. You can then just turn it back on and you'll see everything is running again. Same with the copper over here, which is this factory. I intend to do this for each factory that I have, with each section having its own little control room. This does create quite a problem though, because we then need to organize all of our power, don't mind the clipping here, so that each line has its own dedicated section, creating lots of different circuits. Now this certainly won't be for everyone, however, it may save you a bit of effort later on if you set them up now whilst you're building your factory. As you can see, all of these have the same system in place, and these are turned off and now they're turned on again. It's a pretty cool idea. This does mean that each factory has its own power section and circuit running all the way along to these control towers. However, this does give us a unique design element. As more of the power lines are run alongside one another, they create this braided kind of thicker cable look, which I really like. And the more that you have, the cooler it looks. So we're going to be running all of these along these power joints above or power pillars above the factory out of headway, with each one having its own designated point, which is done by giving it its own sign. This bright green one means that it's power that should be on all the time, such as for our miners or just for lighting that's for the walkways on our factory. We then have the red, which is anything that's currently iron. This is specifically iron ingots because this is the ingot section. This is concrete, which is the orange one. And then we have the greeny turquoise color, which is, or cyan maybe, which is for copper currently. It's going to be a lot of work, but it does look pretty cool. So that is pretty much all of our tips. We do have one more. So if you are enjoying the video, if you found it helpful, please do drop a thumbs up. And obviously, if you want to see more, remember to subscribe. And I should also mention that we are using our own music. If you do like the music in this video, feel free to check the link out in the description, which will take you over to my Spotify, and you can listen to it for free. For my final tip, a lot of people talk about using daisy chaining, which can only be done with lights at the moment or things like the power storage. You can't do this on normal machinery because it only has one connection. However, you can download a mod should you want to do that. It makes everything have the extra joints. However, you can actually do this in vanilla, which I'll show you now. So in this factory, we've kind of cheated it. And what we've done is we've actually placed these power joints so close to the actual factory's joints that it allows us to kind of cheat this daisy chain look. And the way that it clips into the factory, it actually looks like it's part of it. It doesn't look fake. And the way that we've done this is actually by using fencing. Now you will need to trial this at your own peril. It might take a bit of work, but as you can see, I've already done it on my refineries, and here we're going to demonstrate it on some constructors. And so what we're going to do, we've placed some fencing and we've run this all the way up to about the same height as the junction. And we're going to do the same if we can along, well, we might have to do it this way. There we go. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take the power line and we are going to find a spot which we like to run this joint. And I actually think the best place is going to be here. Then from here, we're going to run this along to the next one as well. And then along to the next one once again. From here, we're going to connect these up. And then after that, you can actually delete the fencing. And here you are. A little tip that you can use should you wish. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this little insight as to how I run power, and more importantly, why. And hopefully with this, you'll actually be able to clean up your factories a little bit yourself and organize them should you wish to. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to all of our supporters who allow me to make this content, most notably our Solar Eclipse patrons, The Calamity, Cerebral Tag, James Irwin, as well as our Lunar Eclipse patrons, Dixie Chris, Lord of July, and Ben, as well as our Blood Moon of the Day, which today is Papa Snoozy. Anyway, guys, until next time, as always, ciao for now.